Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimbyrleigha. If you've never been here before, nice to finally meet you. We have a sponsor today. Today's sponsor is Green Chef. Green Chef is a CCOF certified organic meal kit company that helps you cook clean, delicious dinners week after week with step-by-step recipes and pre-measured premium ingredients that save you time. Green Chef has options for every lifestyle: keto, paleo, vegan, gluten-free, vegetarian, fast and fit, and Mediterranean, which is my favorite. I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of time to go grocery shopping, let alone put together recipes for entire meals. You can get all the ingredients that come pre-measured, perfectly portioned, and mostly prepped from Green Chef. They give you step-by-step instructions, chef's tips, and photos to guide you as you follow the recipes. If you haven't tried it, it's a must. I tried the honey citrus glazed salmon. It has mangoes, jerk spice carrot fries, and roasted broccoli. Look how delicious all of this food looks. So if you're looking for a way to make cooking easy and spend less time stressing and more time enjoying delicious home-cooked meals, use my code Kimbyrleigha130 to get $130 off plus free shipping on your first box. Go to greenchef.com for more details, or you can look in my description box and everything will be right there. Once again, I want to thank Green Chef for sponsoring this video. That's really good. Devouring all day. Try it. Okay, now let's get into today's case. This is not a deep dive, but I will have one coming. I promise. I've been doing a little bit of shorter videos here and there, but I promise you I'm working on one. I know those are your favorite, and there will be more. But then there are cases like this one that I find to be so important to tell. And there may not be enough information to stretch a video for 2 hours or 2.5 and go really deep, but I still want this story to be told. None of us choose where we were born or to whom. We don't choose what race, nationality, gender that we are, or our social class that we belong to. Some could say it's just the luck of the draw. You could either end up in the lap of luxury with a silver spoon in your mouth, or impoverished with merely crumbs to eat without ever feeling like your stomach is full. Or you can end up somewhere in between. I want to introduce you to Maria Reyes. She was 21 years old when she gave birth to her daughter, Damaris Alexandra Reyes Rivas. Damaris was born November 4th, 2001 in San Vicente, El Salvador. Maria was a single mom raising Damaris to the best of her ability. El Salvador is a country in Central America. The year Damaris was born was terrifying for the residents of El Salvador because on January 13, 2001, a 7.9 magnitude earthquake struck, with the epicenter 60 miles southwest of San Miguel, El Salvador, which is only about 50 miles away from San Vicente. And there were aftershocks in San Vicente at 6.6 magnitude 1 month after the main shock. This catastrophe caused 944 deaths, 5,000 injuries, as well as over 108,000 buildings being destroyed. Over half of the deaths were the result of massive landslides like this one that I'm showing you on the screen. Many systems that facilitate the treatment of ground and surface water were completely destroyed, and this made drinking water scarce, which increased the risk of disease, especially because people were desperate enough to scavenge for food and water in areas that contained human remains. Tens of thousands of people were homeless and living on the streets. More fortunate people lived in these small, overcrowded quarters in places with high crime rates, which were a result of people becoming more and more desperate to survive. If you were lucky enough to live indoors, you could hardly call it such. The structures were merely makeshift shelters. They didn't protect from wind, rain, or sun. They didn't have plumbing, electricity, or running water. This created very unsanitary conditions. Maria wanted a better life for Damaris and herself. The violence had also increased in El Salvador. It has one of the highest crime rates worldwide. Most of the crime is gang-related, and it's estimated that there are 60,000 individuals that are members of gangs. Many of these people feel like they have no other option than to form these groups of individuals in similar circumstances to band together committing crimes in order to survive. Maria was always thinking of a way out. She dreamed of moving to America. She dreamed of being free, being safe, being happy, living a better life. It seemed like it would never become a reality. But in 2005, something happened, and it gave Maria the kick she needed to truly find a way out. She witnessed a group of armed men robbing a bus, hijacking it during broad daylight. She was paranoid that they had seen her, and to make matters worse, the authorities tracked her down and questioned her about what she saw. She was terrified, but she had no choice but to cooperate with authorities. After that, she began to fear that these individuals, who were most likely gang members and committed this robbery, would seek some type of revenge on her if they found out that she had provided information that resulted in their arrests. Maria decided that her best option would be to flee to the United States, where some of her family members lived. They helped her come up with a plan. It was hard on her. Damaris was only 4 years old, and it was too dangerous for Maria to bring her along. So Maria's mom stepped in and agreed to take care of Damaris until Maria was safe and could find a way to have Damaris join her. I don't know if you know anyone that has risked their life to escape a situation like Maria's, but this is not an easy feat. You never know what's going to happen. It's so sad that people are desperate enough to choose this way out. At least Maria had loved ones waiting for her, people that could keep her safe and accommodate her until she assimilated into the American lifestyle. Maria left in the middle of the night. She did as she was instructed by her family. She rode bus after bus until she got to the US-Mexico border. Her journey was nowhere near complete. Maria had to walk for 6 days through the desert. Think about that for a minute. 6 whole days of walking and the condition she was in, being hungry and worse yet, thirsty. There are so many people who don't make it. Maria did make it. She eventually managed to get to Maryland, where her sister was living. Just because she was now living in America didn't make life easy for Maria. She had to find work, and being an illegal citizen meant that there were not many jobs to choose from, but eventually she did land a job at a local restaurant. She worked long hours, usually trying to pick up extra shifts just to make ends meet. And so she could send some of that money back to El Salvador for her mother to buy things for Damaris. Her ultimate goal was to make enough money to pay to have her safely brought to America so that they could reunite. The typical method for crossing the border into the United States is to be guided by a coyote, not the animal. A coyote is a person who smuggles immigrants across the Mexican-United States border. The word coyote is a Mexican Spanish word from an Aztec root, coyote, or trickster. Considering these individuals are sly and cunning as they transport people across the border, the name was pretty much adopted. It's not cheap for coyotes to bring someone to America. It was going to cost Maria at least $11,000. 2 years went by, and Maria was nowhere near having extra money to save toward Damaris coming to America. It was also scary for such a young child to travel alone. So she waited and saved and watched her little girl grow up through pictures while she tried to become as stable as possible on her own. Finally, Maria met a man, got married, and this would bring stability to her life. However, it was still difficult to save $11,000. Maria ended up having a son in 2007, and a couple years later, she welcomed another one. Almost a decade goes by. Maria doesn't feel content not having Damaris by her side, so she finally gets her savings together to bring her to America. In 2014, Maria paid Coyotes $11,000 to bring Damaris to her in Maryland. Most people, especially young children and teens, have no idea how vulnerable they are and how dangerous this trip is. A lot of them have never even left their villages and have never been away from their loved ones. Many of them know they may never see their families again. Even if they were to make it to America, they probably won't ever go back to where they used to call home. They leave their loved ones behind to help them. They risk their lives in hopes that they'll work hard enough in America to send money home to help their families survive. The coyotes are risking their lives as well. These routes are dangerous. They're ridden with gang members and cartels. Coyotes have to rely on gathering the right information, including passwords, to cross into certain areas, and at any moment they can be captured, tortured, or killed. These cartels expect a portion of the money that the coyote has collected. Many, if not all, of these coyotes are gang members themselves, and this is their assigned mission. If they don't carry it out the way that they're instructed, they'll be killed by other members of the gang, so they do not have a choice. It's do or die either way. If the coyote doesn't pay along the way, the gang members and cartels can take the immigrants hostage, where women will be forced to have intercourse, trafficked, and even killed. This is so common that authorities won't even waste their time and resources investigating these crimes. Southern Mexico is the center of the trafficking business, and all of the new arrivals pass through this area. Some never make it out. Many of the women are sold into brothels, where they will never truly be liberated, and they end up succumbing to this promise of freedom, but it's never actualized. They're just locked in another prison, but the journey is long and the temptation is hard to resist. Nogales in northern Mexico, there's a border fence that runs for miles right through Nogales. There are families who get split up and are on either side of this fence, and it's sad because on the weekends they will go there for a chance to just say hello, and they're just inches apart, but a world away, since they could be split apart forever. Competing gangs actually rent access to the border every hour. It's a multi-million-dollar business. And this is the journey Damaris was about to take. Before the sun comes up, she's meeting someone in a secret location, embarking on this journey, trusting strangers as they commit to transport the most precious cargo of all, a human being. After days of traveling, Damaris finally makes it to Mexico. She gets into a car and she's getting ready to cross the border when they hear sirens behind them. It's the Mexican police, and the driver gets pulled over. Damaris is then arrested. She spent 15 days at a facility for unaccompanied minors. These minors are alone. They've been separated from their family, and now they're even more alone with no guide, no assistance, and they're at the mercy of these authorities. Damaris was lucky, if you could even call it that, because she wasn't physically harmed, but she was sent back to her home in El Salvador. After all that trouble, a journey fraught with danger, being captured just miles away from freedom, Damaris is back where she started. You'd think that after such a horrendous experience, that would be that. But Damaris only spent 2 days back in El Salvador before she would attempt the 3,000-mile trip again. Wow, I'm trying to imagine being in the situation, so desperate to make it to America, my home. It's so easy to take it for granted. The second attempt ended up taking a month, and it was brutal. Most of the time is spent outside walking, hiding, even swimming at some points, and just trying to survive. Damaris did survive. She finally made it to America and joined her mom in Maryland. For the first American meal that she ever had, Damaris requested McDonald's. Another thing we tend to take for granted, the easy access to fast food. She had heard about McDonald's so many times. I mean, it is pretty American, so she always wanted to try it. I'm sure that moment was ingrained in her memory forever. Maria got Damaris set up with everything a 13-year-old would need. She began attending Montgomery Village Middle School, where she picked up English very quickly. Like many other young girls her age, Damaris loved to watch TV, make friends, and one of her favorite things to do was to go to the mall. She loved to shop. She was quite the fashionista. And Maria felt like she needed to make up for all of the years that she was away from Damaris, so she was a little bit spoiled. And it wasn't long before her closet was filled with all kinds of clothing and accessories, especially stylish sneakers. Even though Maria tried to make things easy for Damaris and show her love, things were not easy for this mother and daughter after spending the majority of Damaris' life apart. Even though they were now living together, there was still a distance between them. Damaris resented Maria. She would ask her why she left her and why she hadn't sent for her sooner. And I have to admit, I was thinking the same thing. I don't know Maria, so I don't want to be harsh, but it had been years. And doing the math, she would have only had to save about $1,000 a year over all those years. But again, we don't know the details. However, I can understand why Damaris felt the way that she did and questioned her mother. Plus, when Damaris joined Maria in the United States, Maria was no longer working, but she spent most of her time taking care of her two sons, who were 4 and 7 years old. That could have made Damaris feel sad because she lost so much time with her mother. She began attending Watkins Mill High School in August of 2016. Early into the school year, Damaris was approached by an organization called Identity. They support at-risk Latino youth. They'd known that she had been an unaccompanied minor, and they offer counseling and other assistance to students that may be suffering from PTSD or have trouble assimilating or just need friends who have been through the same thing. Sadly, a lot of immigrants in their teens are desperate to connect with others. Many of them don't have family in the United States, and they end up joining gangs. Because gangs offer somewhat of a family. They knew a girl like Damaris would be susceptible to gangs because they knew she'd be looking for something to belong to. She was young and impressionable. One of the most dangerous gangs would be looking for immigrants. It's called MS-13. We will definitely be revisiting this in depth. This is one of the most interesting aspects of this case, in my opinion. Before researching, I had never even heard of MS-13, which is surprising because even Donald Trump spoke publicly about them during several of his speeches, promising to completely eradicate them. Listen.
This is about MS-13, and we'll have another announcement next week with the Attorney General, the FBI, and others concerning our cities. But we're here today to provide an update on my administration's all-out campaign to destroy MS-13, a vile and evil gang of people. We've just concluded a historic operation leading to the arrest and indictment of dozens of savage MS-13 members and leaders all across the country. So this is something that's taken place over the last few days.
Damaris was at the age where teens start to rebel. Maria began to worry about Damaris. Very early into the school year, Maria would drop her off at school and watch her walk inside. But then later, she'd get a call from the school saying Damaris had not been in her classes. But that wasn't the only reason that Maria was growing concerned. Damaris also began to disappear from home. One night, Maria had gone to check on Damaris around 1 a.m. and she hadn't been in her bed. It turns out she was out partying all night. It's not really atypical for a high school student to do this. Maria hadn't raised a teenager yet, plus they didn't have the best relationship. Maria may have felt Damaris was hiding things from her, and she clearly was. Damaris was beautiful. She had dark brown almond-shaped eyes, soft, flawless skin, a beautiful smile, and many guys were trying to get her attention. That November, Maria had gone to pick Damaris up from school, but the school couldn't find her. Damaris ended up being gone for a week. She did call Maria after a week and asked if she could come home. When Maria told her she could, Damaris warned that she needed to be picked up carefully because she didn't want them to see Maria. She said that something bad could happen. She refused to tell her mother what she had been doing that week or who she had been with. Sounds really odd and crazy. Maria was worried about her daughter, rightfully so. That must be so frustrating, feeling out of control, yet wanting to protect someone you love. Maria decided that it would be best for Damaris if she went to live with relatives in Texas. She planned on sending her there after they spent Christmas together as a family. But December 10, 2016, to her surprise, Maria realized Damaris had left home once again. After what Damaris had told Maria last time she disappeared, Maria decided to report her missing to the Gaithersburg Police Department, and they quickly assigned a detective to Damaris's case, since she was a minor. Maria continued to text Damaris in the weeks after her disappearance, begging her to please come home, but Damaris never responded. Maria noticed that Damaris had been active on Facebook. It was her only link to her daughter. On Christmas, Damaris posted a picture of herself with a young man. Maria started to see hints through Damaris's Facebook that she seemed to be in love, but also hints that she could be in major danger as well. Maria didn't know this man, and Damaris had mentioned something bad could happen if Maria saw him or the other people she was spending time with. Plus, she seemed desperate to come home last time. On January 4th, Maria called Damaris once again, and this time she finally answered. Wow. It must be bittersweet because she just got in touch with her, but she's so far away. And when she begged her to come home, Damaris told her, I can't. After Damaris had been gone for almost a month, Maria knew that she would have to try something new to figure out what was going on with her daughter. She ended up hacking into Damaris's Facebook, and that's when she grew even more concerned about her safety. Maria saw messages that Damaris had been sent. And they said things like, those guys want to kill you, and they have given permission to take you out. Another message said, get ready. When Maria went to look at these profiles of the individuals sending Damaris these messages, she recognized familiar images that disturbed her. Skulls, guns, coffins, and gang signs of the gang that she knew was very dangerous from El Salvador, MS-13, which is one of the reasons people like her wanted to escape in the first place. After seeing these threats, Maria decided that she needed to take things into her own hands. She pieced information together and began knocking on doors trying to find her daughter. One place that was connected to the men on Facebook was Springfield Square Apartments in Virginia. Maria brought her brother with her, and they had a missing poster for Damaris, and they went door to door to see if anyone had seen her. That's brave, yet so very dangerous, and I want to tell you why. I knew so little about gangs. I have knowledge researching cults, but not gangs. I hope you pay attention to this part of the story because it's very intense and I learned a lot. MS-13 is one of America's most notorious gangs. It was formed in Los Angeles, mostly consisting of immigrants from El Salvador. They came together during somewhat of a civil war, and they felt at the time they needed to band together to confront their enemies. They had similar interests, heavy metal music, specifically AC/DC and Iron Maiden. They all wore their hair long, and they loved that grungy, edgy style with the ripped jeans and the tattoos and the gold chains, that sort of thing. The gang formed in LA when there was already a ton of violence and gang activity. Soon, the gang grew, and cliques started forming in other states all over the United States. The more they spread, the more well-known they became, and the more crimes they would end up committing. Some ended up in prison, and others were deported back to El Salvador. In 2011 alone, the U.S. deported over 400,000 immigrants. The amount of gang members multiplies quickly because each member recruits other members. I was curious why the name MS-13. It comes from the words Mata Salvatrucha. The first word Mata, and I'm trying my best here, roughly translates into rambunctious group of kids, which kind of becomes the word for gang because they're running around, being crazy, and so it makes sense. The second word, Salvatrucha, is two words combined, salva, which stands for El Salvador, and trucha, which translates into savvy. So basically, it's a savvy group of rambunctious kids from El Salvador. Now, the 13 is a bit of a mystery. There are some that say it stands for evil because 13 is known as a satanic number. Others say it represents the M because it's the 13th letter in the alphabet. The reason the letter M is significant isn't because of their own name. It's to pay homage toward the Mexican mafia, who had actually recognized MS-13 as a legit gang, which is kind of a big deal considering how powerful the Mexican mafia is. Another reason some say that the 13 exists in their name is because they cut their victims into 13 pieces. The 13 also symbolizes the 13 seconds that gang members are beaten by other members if they fail to carry out their assigned missions. They get plowed by a number of people for 13 seconds straight. 13 seconds may not seem like a long time, but when you're being plummeted by strong, vicious gang members, that is the slowest 13 seconds of your life. I wanted to do something I'm going to stop talking for 13 seconds so we can feel what it feels like. Starting now. "13 seconds. There's a myth that I want to clear up. There's a misconception about gangs that they solely exist because of drug trafficking and dealing, and that may be true for some gangs, but not necessarily MS-13. It's true that there are members that are involved with dealing at a small level, but that's not the point of MS-13 according to its members. It's a social club, and I'm not trying to be funny, but think about book clubs or chess clubs or car clubs. I think you get the picture. It's a group of people with common interests that come together in this sort of exclusive manner to enjoy the activities as a community or a family or pseudo family, a surrogate family, the only family that many of them have. They have strong bonds due to their shared experiences. MS-13 is a family organization first and a criminal organization second. We see and hear a lot about men in gangs, but what about women? I stated earlier that they target young girls like Damaris. Why? Well, there's a clique called the Black Widows. The women's mission is to marry wealthy men, tricking them into helping them become legal citizens just to off them, take all of their money through life insurance schemes. And they're also tasked with taking care of the gang members in MS-13, cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. In El Salvador, women are not even allowed to join MS-13 because there was a 17-year-old named Brenda Paz. She had been a member, but she decided to turn on the gang in 2003, and she began helping the federal authorities. At the time, Brenda was 4 months pregnant and ended up being taken out by MS-13 members. After that, the leaders in El Salvador became convinced that women could not be trusted, and that's why they ended up banning any new female members from joining the gang. The United States was much more progressive than Central America, and some of the MS-13 cliques did allow women to join. MS-13 is also a business. Yes, gang members have salaries. They acquire their money from extortion, and they target the most vulnerable people. Their extortion business racks in an upward of hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's sad because a lot of times they target small mom and pop shops that can't defend themselves. It's easy. They get a portion of your business's income, or they will take the owner's lives. It's that simple. So why is MS-13 seen as so dangerous? They actually kill less than many other gangs in the US. However, it's the way that they go about it that makes them stand out. It's their methods. They're so gruesome that they're remembered. Their weapons of choice, machetes. It's a common tool in El Salvador. Plus, they're readily available. It's much easier to obtain them. They're inexpensive. There's no training needed, unlike firearms, and they're terrifying looking. The more horrific the crime, the more respect they get from fellow gang members, and of course, the infamy surrounding the gang and their reputation for violence. I watched an interview with a man that considers himself a former MS-13 member. The thing is, he said if you were to ask MS-13, they'd tell you he's still in the gang, because the truth is, you never get out. The only way out is in a box. You see, when you're in MS-13, you learn a lot of secrets, and you'll take those secrets to your grave, not by choice. He says that he regrets so many things that he's done. He had to take the lives of fellow gang members as he rose through the ranks. Because of the things that he had to witness, he said he felt like peeling off his own skin to remove all of the gang-related tattoos, since they were a daily reminder of his transgressions. As you rise through the ranks, your salary increases, but not by much. It's more about power and privilege. For example, a member that's in charge of looking over a mission to make sure that the other members carry out their duties, they would be paid about 1,500 pesos a week, and that's about $74. Now, if you killed someone, you get privileges. You get women, clothing, weapons, and you only get 2 strikes. And what I mean by that is if you don't carry out a mission the first time, you're beaten for 13 seconds. The second time, you're beaten in the ribs with a baseball bat. And the third time, you're taken out. The former member is in constant fear for his life. So why do they join? Well, MS-13 starts recruiting kids as early as 5th grade. They're so impressionable and vulnerable. They're looking for a family. And these unaccompanied minors like Damaris, they just begin this indoctrination process right away, which reminds me of how cults operate. They recruit these kids on none other than social media, and that's scary. The former gang member said if parents were to pay close attention to the things their children are saying and the way they're acting, there are signs. As they get more indoctrinated, they acquire a specific vernacular of gang slang. So why am I telling you all this? Because Maria saw those signs in the Facebook messages. Damaris constantly leaving. Maria started to fear the worst. So she looked into it more. And she had this gut feeling that MS-13 had manipulated her beautiful, naive, and vulnerable daughter. And she was terrified about what would happen next. As Maria investigated the men in Damaris's post, she put together the fact that Damaris was dating an MS-13 gang member. That was just as dangerous as being part of MS-13, possibly even more dangerous because of the lack of affinity and loyalty between Damaris and the members. She would be seen as baggage, completely disposable. When Maria and her brother went door to door looking for Damaris, there was a woman they spoke to that gave them clues regarding a group of men that lived in that apartment complex. They were there at that moment. The woman points to the group as they're smoking near this basketball court, but she tells Maria, "Be careful, they're dangerous." That did not stop her. She approached this group of tattooed young men and just showed them that picture of Damaris and asked them if they had ever seen her. They all told Maria that they did not recognize her, and they started walking away. But as they were leaving, Maria's brother thought that he heard one of them say in Spanish, "We've got to shut her up." On January 12th, just a few days after Maria had begged Damaris to come home and then started searching for her on her own, news came out about a body that had been washed up on the shore of the Potomac River. The same state, Virginia, that she had been knocking on doors, and it was rumored that the body belonged to a leader of a clique in MS-13. Maria must have been so fearful because she's waiting to find out who this body belonged to. The remains were finally identified as that of 21-year-old rapper Christian Sosa Rivas. Same last name as Damaris, but not related, just a common last name in El Salvador. Christian was the leader of an MS-13 clique in Springfield, Virginia. Just as I've explained that heavy metal was a common interest back when MS-13 was born, music itself was a huge part of MS-13. Rap videos created by MS-13 members and posted on social media are actually used to represent their cliques, intimidate their rivals, and recruit new members. There's an entire culture built around music created by the members of gangs. For example, the Mexican drug cartels have what they call narco corrido music. I might not be saying that perfectly, but translated, it means drug ballads. Yeah, it sounded interesting to me. This music is a subgenre of the regional Mexican corrido, which are Spanish songs about oppression, history, and daily life for criminals. I think a lot of songs we listen to are about trials and tribulations that people go through, and listeners relate. Thus, they become fans, kind of like how you relate to my videos, so you keep coming back. MS-13 members even listen to these rap songs as inspiration while they're carrying out crimes. Christian was pretty well known. He had a following on social media, specifically his Facebook and his YouTube channel. I want to play you a few clips of some of his songs.
Para hablar de calle, la calle ferma y no rige. La calle es mi vida y es la vida que uno elige. En la calle yo veo las cosas con detalles. Esta es la vida de una de los valles. Jenner, escucha bien. Hace días que a mi madre no la vuelvo a ver. Mi vida la resumo en un papel. Solo era un niño con la edad de 16, chistoso, extrovertido y enojado a la vez. Aún recuerdo.
I can see why he garnered a following. You may not see it, but I think he's got the typical qualities of a successful rapper. He's attractive, definitely rough around the edges, mysterious, and he's good at it. Christian's rap name was Christian Jenner. And this sounds cheesy. I don't think it was a spinoff of Kris Jenner, but yeah, that was his name. That's the name he picked. And that was the name he used on social media. What became Christian's very last rap video was posted on YouTube December 10th, 2016. In this song, he bragged about being the leader of the Harrison, Virginia clique. The song was entitled, I'm Still Alive. He said, respect the leader of the Harrison clique. Then he and his fellow clique members posted photos of themselves on social media throwing up their gang signs. And this was done under MS-13 graffiti. Christian rapped about himself in the third person, dropping his street names Sombra, which means shadow, or Black Boy. In this song, he says, there are lots of people who want to see me die. I'm not going anywhere. But he was wrong. He was being targeted. Members of another MS-13 clique in Maryland saw Christian as a poser, meaning they thought that he was pretending to be part of MS-13 for clout. And they wanted to rise up in the ranks in the gang, so they plotted his demise. It was New Year's Eve, and they used 2 women to lure Christian into the woods, where they ambushed him with machetes, tree limbs, and rocks, and then dumped all of his remains into the freezing cold Potomac River. Authorities thought that his music may had actually contributed to his death, because just 2 months before, he rapped about his own murder while holding up a handful of bullets. The song was called Forgive Me, Mom. He uploaded it to YouTube on November 9th, 2016, and one of the lines was, I can't believe that they're going to bury me. And he raps to his mom, I would have liked you to have been called Grandma, which means he doesn't think he would live long enough to have kids. So what does all of this have to do with Damaris? Well, while investigating Christian's death, police discovered videos of Damaris that connected her to Christian, and that is what prompted them to begin their search for her. Christian was the man in the photos with Damaris on Facebook. It looked as though they were dating. Damaris was 15 and Christian was 21. This was concerning in and of itself, but more concerning was the content in the video. Not only that, the video featured another young girl who went missing on January 17th, just days after Christian's body was found. Her name is Venus Romero Iraheta. She was 17 years old. It's important for me to introduce you to Venus, as she's significant in the story. Venus was a lot like Damaris. She left El Salvador for the United States just a few weeks before Damaris. Venus's father had been a taxi driver in El Salvador, and sometimes he was paid to chauffeur MS-13 members around. When Venus was 12, her father didn't come home one night. He had been jailed, along with other members of MS-13, along with a rival gang, 18th Street. Venus started dating an MS-13 member. He was also a dealer, and he sold drugs inside of their school. This boyfriend of hers had marijuana on him at school one day, and he was worried that he was going to get caught. So what did he do? He puts it in Venus's backpack so that she ends up getting caught with it and being suspended from school. Then Venus's brother ends up joining the MS-13 rival gang 18th Street. Venus was afraid that she was going to end up getting stuck in the crossfire between her brother and her boyfriend's gang. So she decided to flee to the United States. Her family paid a coyote $7,500 to take her there. Venus crossed the Rio Grande on a dinghy near McAllen, Texas. She ended up being arrested just days later in the desert by Border Patrol. She was then turned over to the Office of Refugee Resettlement because she didn't have a parent with her. First, she was placed with her aunt in Riverside, California, and then eventually joined her mother, the one that had left her when she was only 7 years old. And that was in Alexandria, Virginia. This sounds a lot like what happened with Damaris and what she went through. However, Venus had way more connections to MS-13, which made her more of a target. Venus connected with MS-13 members when she arrived in Virginia, but when her grades began to suffer, she tried to distance herself from them. Before she could do that, though, she met Christian. At first, she wasn't aware that he was a member of MS-13, but she started to put the pieces together whenever she overheard him using that familiar gang slang during phone calls. Damaris and Venus came to the United States just weeks apart, trying to escape the violence in their own country. They ended up not far from one another when they got to the United States. They both felt isolated once coming to America, and they were looking for a way to belong. MS-13 was the group that they both ended up turning to. These two young women could have been best friends with so much in common, but instead, they became enemies almost right away. Venus had been dating Christian for a month, and one night, she came over his house, went into his room, and found Damaris inside. This did not go over well, and Venus wanted to know who the hell she was, where she was from, and what she was doing there. And that's when Damaris explained that she was from El Salvador. She told Venus her story about how she came to the US and then how she ended up at Christian's. Damaris started hanging out with members of MS-13 that approached her at school. Eventually, she was introduced to Christian, and even though he was dating Venus, he started spending time with Damaris as well. After Damaris left her home on December 10th, she ended up bouncing from one gang member's apartment to the next with nothing but her backpack. For some reason, the clique started to get tired of Damaris being around, maybe because Venus was more connected to the gang and they didn't approve of Damaris being with Christian. Eventually, Christian was forced by the gang members to tell Damaris to stop coming around. And of course, this made her angry. We weren't there, so we cannot know for sure what happened, but it's been said that Damaris wanted to be caught by Venus to get back at Christian for telling her to leave. A friend of Christian's claimed that the night that Christian was murdered, Damaris had texted him about Christian, saying, "I told you Christian was going to pay." This set into motion the next series of events that would shock Virginia residents and beyond. Soon you'll find out what happened to Damaris and why. After Venus found out what happened to Christian, she wanted to know who the two girls were that lured him into the woods. She suspected that one of them was Damaris, since he would have trusted her. Venus was obviously distraught over Christian's death, and she blamed Damaris. On January 8th, 2017, another member of MS-13, Jose Castillo Rivas, asked Damaris to meet him up to smoke some weed. When they arrived at the Recotting Park, she saw members of MS-13 waiting for her. And she looked at Jose and said, "I've been set up." That must have been a terrifying feeling. And what happens next is probably one of the worst series of events that I've read about. Venus was one of the individuals waiting there, and without hesitation, she hit Damaris in the face. And this caused her to fall to the ground. And then the group would spend hours interrogating and torturing Damaris. Venus attempted to get Damaris to admit that she was one of the girls responsible for what happened to Christian. At one point, the group forced Damaris to take off her shirt and her shoes and stand in the snow so that she would feel as much pain as Christian did. They then moved her to a new location where the group began to charge at her. One member clicked a cigar cutter in her face, and another told her in Spanish that she might lose fingers. Others told Damaris that they had a rifle and gasoline. Venus told her that she was not going to see another day. The members screamed at Damaris, demanding that she give them information about her involvement in Christian's homicide. Though Damaris swore that she wasn't there, she did play a part. But it was another ex-girlfriend of his that texted him and asked him to come smoke weed that night, saying, Come sit with me. And that's why the members did the same thing to Damaris, and she fell for it. When she was moved again to what would be her final location, Venus confronted her more aggressively, and that's when she waved a knife at her and then used it to take off a tattoo that Christian had given her. At this point, Damaris admits to Venus that she had sex with Christian, and this only made Venus more angry. She said, "You're going to remember me until the day that we see each other in hell. Don't forget my name." Then she proceeded to tell Damaris her full name and her nickname and told her she'd never forgive her. At that point, Venus then thrusted the weapon into Damaris's abdomen and her neck again and again. After Venus was done with Damaris, another person there, Wilmer Sanchez Serrano, took a large tree branch and impaled her with it repeatedly. It's disgusting.
23-year-old Wilmer Sanchez Serrano before the judge for sentencing. This photo shows the stick he plunged into the victim's neck, one of the final fatal wounds. During this police interview played at his trial, Serrano matter-of-factly shows detectives how he did it, describes the stick's size.
It was about that high. She said she knew she was going to die.
Damaris ended up with a total of 19 wounds. And finally, the group used a rope to drag her to an area under an interstate, right below an overpass. They put her face down in a shallow puddle. They then covered her with railroad ties and left. Remember the videos that the police found that connected Damaris to Christian? The videos of Damaris that they discovered when they were investigating Christian's death had actually been cell phone videos of everything that I just described. The group recorded everything from that night, hoping to send it to MS-13 leaders in El Salvador in hopes that they would be able to move up the ranks. It was alleged by Emerson Fugon Lopez that whenever Christian was murdered, Venus was supposed to take over his clique. So did she have involvement and was just trying to blame it on someone else? The videos have been recovered from Apple's iCloud and would end up being a key part of this entire investigation and a big help to find justice for both Damaris and Christian. Sadly, on February 11, 2017, Damaris's remains were found in the 7100 block of Wimsett Road in Springfield Industrial Park. She had been there for a month, so I can only imagine what they had to witness. Fairfax County Police, along with the Montgomery County Police, were involved in the search for Damaris. They had received tips in the weeks leading up to her body's discovery that she was in danger. They had searched around that area of the park in Springfield a couple times before they ended up finding her. Venus allegedly took off, and that's why she was reported missing by her mother on January 15, 2017.
Are you okay? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm okay. Everything was okay. I was with friends, and the reason why I left was because I was scared about what happened to my ex-boyfriend.
When she did end up returning almost a month later, police brought her in for an interrogation. This police interrogation was recorded, and I'm going to be showing you some of it. This right here is an actual screenshot from the video, and Venus is holding on to Damaris. And you can just see the fear in that poor girl's eyes because she knew what these people were capable of. At first, Venus denied being responsible for anything that happened to Damaris, but eventually, during the interrogation, she confessed to it. She replayed that day to the officers who were questioning her, and she told them every detail, even detailing that she believed she wounded Damaris 13 times. Despite her admissions, Venus still denied being a member of MS-13. She said that others' motivation may have been to rank up, but her motivation was purely love and hate, a crime of passion.
I killed her
How did you kill her?
with a knife.
What did you do with the knife?
No recuerdo ¿Cuántas puñaladas le di en su
I
estómago?
don't remember how many times I stabbed her in the stomach.
Was it a lot?
Like 13? Something like that.
Why 13?
I don't remember. No, I think it was 12 here. Then that 13 wasn't here.
10 people ended up being arrested and charged. 4 adults, Cindy Blanco Hernandez, 18-year-old Wilmer A. Sanchez Serrano, 21-year-old Aldair J. Miranda Carcamo, 18-year-old Jose Castillo Rivas, and 6 other juveniles. An official with the Department of Homeland Security said that 18 and 19-year-olds in high school will work to recruit younger kids into these gangs to help them commit these crimes because they know that charges are going to be less serious for juveniles. What happened to Damaris and Christian only reaffirmed the fear that authorities had, and that was that MS-13 was growing in prevalence in that region. Police blamed MS-13 for multiple homicides in Montgomery County, Maryland over the last 2 years. Before this, there was also a pair of bodies that had been found in Fairfax County Park early in 2017 that police believed to be connected to MS-13. Sadly, in many of these cases, the victim or the suspect, sometimes both, are young, not even adults yet, and they have been smuggled into the United States from Central America, just as Damaris and Venus. Emerson Fugon Lopez, Cindy Blanco Hernandez, and Aldair J. Miranda Caracamo all pleaded guilty to charges including abduction and, in 2 instances, gang participation. These pleas were part of a deal with the prosecutors, and in these pleas, they all were to serve as witnesses in the trial of the other 3 defendants, Venus Arajeta, Jose Torres Serrano, and Wilmer Sanchez Serrano, who were being charged directly with Damaris' murder. Jose Torres Serrano helped to organize everything on Damaris' last night on Earth, hoping that if he sent those videos of her to MS-13 leaders in El Salvador as proof that he was willing to do the bidding of the gang, that he would be put in a higher position of power. And he had been given the green light by the leaders of El Salvador to go ahead and do what he did. Jose did end up being promoted within the gang due to his participation in the crime, along with helping to orchestrate everything. Jose was the one doing the filming and the narrating. Rather than pleading guilty, Jose decided to go to trial. But unfortunately for him, he had been shameless enough to wear a court-ordered ankle bracelet with a GPS in it that allowed these authorities to place Jose at the scene of the crime. The judge in Jose's case said that he believed that Jose was possibly smart enough to never hold the weapons himself, but that he had been the mastermind behind the whole thing, and that he believed that Jose wouldn't quit after Damaris. Serrano ended up being sentenced to 55 years in prison for his part. And when sentencing him, the judge told Jose, "There is no future in a gang. You either end up dead or in prison, and you're going to prison." Wilmer Sanchez Serrano also decided to go to trial rather than pleading guilty. He didn't deny playing a part in it, but he claimed that he was tricked into going to the park and that he wasn't even a member of the MS-13 gang. He claimed that because he was there, other individuals told him that the same thing would happen to him if he didn't participate. He ended up being found guilty on second-degree murder and was sentenced to 33 years in prison. Venus Romero Arajeta, unlike the other 2 individuals who were directly charged, ended up pleading guilty to the charges of first-degree murder, abduction, and gang participation. She was facing a maximum sentence of life in prison plus 10 years on each of the other charges. Venus pleaded for mercy in court. She said, "I would give my life to bring her back. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She ended up being sentenced to 40 years in prison. In a jailhouse interview, Venus talked to the Washington Post about the MS-13 gang, saying, "They aren't the monsters that people think they are. You don't know their stories. You don't know what's happened to them that made them this way." And I agree. We don't. But that doesn't justify what they do. Maria sat through the court proceedings and watched the videos that were taken that night of her daughter when she was taken from this world. This was just another heartbreak that she had to endure after the already devastating loss of her daughter. Maria had been pregnant at the time, but she ended up having a miscarriage after all of this. She said that she didn't think the baby was able to withstand it because all the crying that she was doing and thinking about all the hurt that these people caused her daughter. She also spoke about how she thought she was doing the best that she could for her daughter by bringing her to the United States. She said that she didn't know people like this existed in the United States. She thought it was safe to have her daughter here. Here's a heart-wrenching picture of Maria holding up a dress that Damaris was supposed to wear for upcoming quinceañera. Maria had no idea that that phone call with Damaris would be the last time she heard her daughter's voice. Friends and family gathered at St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church to say goodbye to Damaris one last time. Her casket was a silvery white color, just like the pretty shoes that she planned to wear, and the flowers that were placed on top were pink to match her dress. About 50 people were in attendance, mostly her closest friends and family, including her grandmother, who raised her. She was given a visa to attend the funeral. Many people were too afraid to come because they thought that MS-13 may cause even more pain by showing up as they were showing their respects. Many of the people that were there were wearing these custom-made t-shirts with a photo of Damaris on them, along with the words, "You left a hole in our hearts. We will remember you forever." Maria sat in the front row with her husband and mother. It was hard for her not to feel like it was her fault for what happened to Damaris, since she believed she was saving her from violence in El Salvador, but instead, it followed her to the United States. Maria cried when they were putting this decorative cloth that had pictures of roses on it over the casket before it was lowered into the ground. One family member even screamed and said, "My love, you'll always be in my heart," as the casket was descending. Parents are not supposed to bury their children. They imagine leaving this earth before them so they could avoid ever having to witness losing them. That's not the case for every parent, and not for Maria. I hope it isn't the case for me or any of you. If you have experienced this pain, I'm so sorry. I truly am. I try to think of an important message to leave you with after these heavy cases. And the one that I could come up with today is if you see someone that's lonely, if you notice someone that doesn't belong, be the person who invites them in, who cherishes them as a friend, who gives them advice, who guides them, who's there for them. If there are children they feel are not a part of a group, they're being left out. If you're in high school, even if you are a parent, if you have a child that's in that same grade, teach them to reach out. Because people feel so lonely in this world, they end up making the choice that Damaris and Venus made. They latch on to individuals that are not good for them because they're vulnerable and they're lonely. We all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted. And so my final message is also, parents, try to be as aware as you can of what your children are doing. I know it's hard. We're all busy, but it could mean life or death. I want to thank you so much once again for watching yet another one of my videos. I appreciate all of you so very much. Thank you. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.